Hello, entrepreneurs, dreamers, business owners, and happy people with high hopes. Welcome to Cashflows with your host, Cash Matthews.
All right. Hello there. Welcome to Cashflows. I am your host today, Cash Matthews, and we're very glad you're here. Hello, Mr. Kenneth.
Howdy.
We'll introduce you officially in a minute, but we are here to explore some of those life questions that maybe you've been asking as an entrepreneur, a parent, a business owner, or somebody who operates a computer on a regular basis. And we call this the pursuit of the good life. And, you know, often it's so easy to feel stalled out in so many different things. And we promote a concept called fire, aim, ready. And so many times it's easy to get stuck in life. And it's easy to have these great ideas, these wonderful dreams, but not really have the time, ability, or stick-to-itiveness to see them come true. And what we do with the Cash Flow Show is we bring people in from the local economy who are out there doing the thing, you know, and they're making a difference and they're making a contribution to society. We ask them golden nuggets about, hey, give us one thing you would tell a business owner, and we'll do those at the end of the show. But we're glad you're here. And once again, fire, aim, ready is our motto, and I think we are ready to introduce Mr. Kenneth Bauckham, our executive producer. Kenneth, hello.
Hello, how's it going?
You know, it's things are well.
Good.
I'm not one of those guys that's overzealous. Like, if I was any better, I'd be twins. But, you know, things are going well. I'm very thankful right now for the way things are going.
Yeah, me too. It's been a great day, a great week so far, and looking forward to some more daily wisdom to help out our local entrepreneurs.
You know, we like to do a little bit of things that we've experienced in our 42 years of business and share those with entrepreneurs just as a starting point. And maybe these ideas affect you, maybe they don't. But I want to share one with you today that we call brain blocking. And this is something I have done most of my business life for 42 years. And somebody the other day from our networking group, the Business Owners Networking Group, asked me, how do you keep all your ideas together? And I have a very simple way I do that. And I categorize my ideas into big, workable kind of ideas, and then just everything else. And for everything else, I just put notes on my phone and I make them searchable. And it's so easy to search notes. But I want to talk today about the big ideas in your life and how do you keep them organized and how do you continue to make progress on big ideas. And I have the most simple concept in the world. It's the same way that I write books. I write everything down in a particular way. But I want to share with you this concept of brain blocking. Today, I have 5 major ideas in my life that are business ideas that I would like to continue to develop. Are they fully developed? No. But a year ago, one of my business blocks, one of my brain blocks, was a file that said Cashflows Podcast. And what I do is I take an actual file folder, Kenneth, and I pin it to the wall and I give it a title. And the title for this show was a file folder pinned to my wall in my office that said Cashflows. And every time I had an idea about it, I wrote it down and I sat across from it at my desk where I could see that file very clearly. I wrote it as neatly as possible for a guy who doesn't write as neatly as possible. And I would add to it. And when I had a break in the action, I would sit there for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes and I would imagineer how to do something. And over the course of the last year, I imagineered just a simple file folder, folded out long ways, pinned to the wall with the word Cashflows on it. And I wrote down the ideas for this very show. And today, that idea is up and running. It's a real thing. I was able to go in and pull that down. Now, does that mean I stopped working on the show? Absolutely not. How do you manage multiple ideas that aren't all the same? Well, this concept is called brain blocking. So I had a brain block for the Cashflow Show. I had one for my company and things that needed to be improved. I have one for this event we're putting on called the Prom. And that way you can work on something big in small, bite-sized increments and make a little bit of progress every time you set your mind to it. I'm not the most disciplined guy in the world when it comes to writing. I'm a writer. I write books, but I don't write all the time. But I do most of the time look at these ideas, and I'll take 10 minutes a day and go, what can I do on this idea today? Now, here's one of the tips. I write down everything. Whatever idea comes into my brain, I consider it to be divine, and I write it down, even if it's a bad idea. So, we were looking at the Cashflows idea, and I'm like, hey, get a topic, find guests, get a production engineer, feed tuna fish mayonnaise. So that was one of those. It was in my brain. I wrote it down, but that did not come to pass. And thank you for the guys that wrote the movie Night Shift, where I stole that hilarious joke from. But anyway, so that's a concept called brain boxing, and of course you have to have access to a wall and 2, 3, 4, 5 files. And this is the same way that you write a book. And if you want to write a book, you just put 15 folders up on the wall, and those folders represent each chapter. And we'll be doing an entire section on how to write a book in a coming Cashflows podcast. But that's what I have for you today, Kenneth, with the brain blocking. And it's not a scheduling technique. A lot of people talk about time blocking, and I think that's brilliant. We'll probably have somebody on the show to talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
But if you want to create great ideas and work on them a little bit over time, that divine inspiration needs some perspiration added to it, and you do that through work, and I do that through brain blocking.
Very cool.
All right, so you ready to get on with the show?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, man. Well, I am excited today. I met Chris Wilson a little while back, and he's a friend of a friend, and he joined the B.O.N.G group, and he has a company, 1080titan.com. His company's 1080 Titan Technologies, and he works in the world of cybersecurity. And I think everybody listening to this today probably ought to listen to this today.
Help us.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much going on there, but we want to welcome Chris to the show. Chris, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're glad you're here. And so real quick, we met you through the B.O.N.G, through mutual friend. Can you just tell us real quick about your B.O.N.G experience and how we came to know each other?
So B.O.N.G has been around for a little bit that I'm aware of. And so the person who introduced me to this place is actually a family relative of mine.
Yeah.
That actually you've known for close to what? I don't know how many years.
About 3 years.
About 3? Was it just 3? Oh, okay.
Well, we knew of each other, but, face to face, maybe a little bit longer than that.
Right. So, I mean, at that point in time, it's been good going to the events and meeting people. I struggle with meeting people in person, especially with loud groups. I do much better in one-on-one. So meeting people one-on-one is a lot easier for me. So it's been good.
Yeah. And in fact, your family, can we say his name?
If you want to.
Brian Scarborough. And he has a unique position in the B.O.N.G, and that he and his wife, Kathy, were among the first 3 members of the group. And I met with them and one other guy when we started this. And what a great debt we have to those first 3 people now that the group grew from 3 to 5,800.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did good work.
Wow.
I just introduced the first 3, and they went and did the rest of the work. Well, so very cool. So your company, 1080titan.com, you're in the cybersecurity world.
Right.
And, I'm almost one of those guys, I just want to look away.
Mm-hmm.
And if something happens, I'll just throw my computer away and buy another one.
Right.
But that probably doesn't solve the problem. Talk to us what's going on in the world of cybersecurity, why we should be worried.
So, ransomware happens. It's been happening for years. And so with ransomware, they're not locking your computer up anymore. They're actually taking the data and just taking it from themselves and then sending you an email, hey, I got your data. Here's screenshots of it. And so with those screenshots, I'm going to release it in 2 weeks if you don't pay me, $1 million or whatever the ransom is for that person that won. Wow. And so you'll never know that your data is be taken because most people, I've walked into several businesses where they don't even have antivirus, not even like a McAfee. It was expired. I have clients all over the United States. I have a client in Japan. I have a client in Germany.
Okay.
I manage them just fine. There's a language barrier a little bit, but I can usually get it because when I was in the military, that's how I got them.
Right.
And so, when you look at this standstill, the government actually got this right to where they actually released a program. You can download it, and it will actually give you a report of all the openness of your computers. So
it'll tell you like the vulnerabilities.
Yeah. So essentially, most computers out of the box are only 30% secure.
Oh.
Yeah. So when you look at it from that standpoint, you run the program, it will tell you how to fix it to where it makes it more secure. So
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's a free program. You can download it. Government actually got it right. And I don't say that very often about the government, but
I haven't heard that from too many people.
That's a new one for our show.
Okay.
But the government actually got this right to the standpoint of where if you have the right computer and you run the right report, it will tell you how secure your stuff is.
Wow. Is that something we should put out on this podcast, or is that something people should get from you directly?
Preferably directory, because when they get the report and they start trying to do it themselves, I'm not responsible for the damages they do to the computer when they realize I can't do anything on it anymore.
Right, and that's probably not that easy to figure all that stuff out.
It gives you step-by instructions to actually do it. But most people, they shouldn't play in the registry editor. When you play in the registry editor, that's when you're going to have issues. Because if you make one wrong move, you're crashing your computer, and your computer's no longer going to be actually working.
Yeah. It's like you can do it yourself. You can be your own mechanic, but you get under the hood, and it's like, move this wire to over here, and it's like, ooh.
Yeah, it's like
that's dangerous
old,
right there.
The at-home appendectomy kit.
That's right. Yeah. It's like you can do it, but should you do it without help? Probably not.
So you have been in this field for a long time.
Over 22 years.
22 years. Okay.
Yeah.
And here we are, at a time and place. What does it look like on the cybersecurity? Because it seems like we've been worried about this for a long time. Mm-hmm. Is it gotten better or gotten worse in the last?
It's getting worse.
Right. Tell us about that.
Because people are making the mistake of clicking on stuff.
Right.
When you click on stuff, it's taking you to a website and it's loading stuff in the background. I can actually hijack your browser without you even knowing it.
Wow.
And that's been going on for a few years.
Right.
So,
I had like the tech world is kind of scary.
Mm-hmm.
I forget, I was at a restaurant and the guy came up with some machine and scanned my my credit card.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, hey, you need to put some kind of protection on your credit card because they have these devices where we can scan your credit card and do this. That's a real thing?
Yeah, same the skimmers you see on the gas pump station. Just it's the same technology. I can walk up to somebody, have my little reader, and have them scan the card and get everything information. Everything is included in that little bar.
What's to keep a server from just taking our card and running away with it?
The server taking your card?
Yeah, or copying it or grabbing the data. Yeah.
Essentially, there's stuff out there to block it. There are NFC blockers. So usually it's using the NFC coming from the chip or for when you put your thing against like the credit card and you do like a little tap.
Yeah.
That's NFC going to that credit card reader.
Okay, and so they can hijack that technology and read my credit card and be off to the races?
Essentially, yeah.
Well, that's kind of lame.
Yeah.
Kenneth, you're a technologically oriented guy. Do you worry about stuff like that?
I don't know if worry is the right word, but I'm aware of it enough, and there are several things that I would do to take steps. Like a really, really fast one, specifically about this NFC, the radio in your card. Like my wallet has a lining in it. I don't know exactly what it's made out of, but it's some fancy technology stuff. And so from outside my wallet, you can't read my card. I have to physically open my wallet and pull my card out for it to start working.
Right.
So it keeps someone from bumping into me at the airport, but if they steal my wallet, then that's still, whatever. They've stolen my wallet. So
you mentioned something that's a concern to me. I think it was during COVID. It seemed like there was an increase in the people stealing at the pump. Mm-hmm. What do we look for when that's going on? Because that one worried me. Like, man, because that happened not far from where we live. There was a report. Mm-hmm. Somebody did a thing. And that's a real thing, obviously.
That's been happening in years. That was happening in Florida. That's happened in North Carolina. That's happened in South Carolina, where the skimmers are actually on the credit card readers. So essentially, the ones that were doing the 25 cents for 15 gallons of gas. Yeah, I don't really know how they were doing that portion of it.
Right.
But I'm sure there's something that they had on their phone that probably helped to knock it off, because those pumps change digitally. You can probably put an app on your phone to where it can change digitally.
Wow.
Essentially, the credit card skimmers that are on the gas pumps.
Right.
I mean, that's been going around for since 2013 that I'm aware of. That's when I came back to the States.
Okay. Well, we just started hearing about it in 2020. I think right when COVID was coming out. We were moving from Austin here, and it was happening all over Austin, and there were reports. And then I'm like, I'm glad we're going to such a sweet place. And then we get here, and not far from us, that was going on as well. So that's pretty common everywhere.
Yeah.
It's not limited by population, even in.
But Chris, do you know, like at the pump or at the ATM, what can we look for while we're standing there? Is there like a clue, like, hey, there might be something wrong here?
So the outside pumps, the ones that are away from everybody and over by the street, that's the one you really want to stay away from, because those are usually the ones that are hit. The other part is you can actually try to wiggle the credit card off.
Yeah.
And if you can wiggle that credit card off, essentially that's one that you need to stay away from.
The part that you stick your card into?
Right.
Like the reader slot.
Right.
So don't like be violent with it. But if you are touching it a little bit and it's moving too much,
Right.
then
that can be a clue
It may
sometimes.
be compromised.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a scary world out there, and I don't know what the liability is for me versus the liability for the card company. Is it better to use a credit card versus a debit card?
It's better going to the store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now that would be inconvenient. That extra 40 seconds.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but if you go in the store and they have the skimmer on, they had the NH skimmer on to stuff because recently Family Dollars put their stuff on to help with the NH skimming inside the store.
Okay.
And so essentially, if you go inside the store, Quick Trip, wherever you want to go, Gum and Go, whatever, just go inside. I mean, it's not that much of a convenience
Right.
when you look at it from, $150 went on my account for something at the end of the day where they're
Right.
charging, I saw a friend of mine have from Charlotte all the way up to Ohio, Cleveland, I believe, where you could trace his route of where they were driving. McDonald's, gas, you name it, on the side of the road, they were doing it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a weird world out there, man.
Yeah.
So how does a guy get into a business like this? I mean, was this part of your military training?
No, actually, it wasn't.
This is just something you're interested in?
Yep. So, the military, you know what I did in the military?
I'm not sure, actually. I'd love to hear it, though.
So,
and by the way, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, our listeners, thank you for that.
So, the whole thing with the military, I missed the going into the IT help desk by a point
Oh,
in the Air Force, by a point.
wow.
I was actually in the kitchen. I actually did lodging, mortuary, fitness, and protocol.
Okay.
Protocols going around with the generals and having make sure everything's going straight with them.
Okay.
Readiness is deploying out to, the middle of nowhere and having, a bare base to set up. I was actually,
Right.
my last unit was actually a Red Horse unit, 823rd down in Herbert Field.
It was a what unit? Say it again.
Red Horse unit, which was a bare base unit.
Okay.
So going down into, Iraq and setting up a bare base. That's essentially what we did. Or humanitarian efforts down in, South America.
Wow.
So that's essentially what I did in the military. So going back to your original question, what got me started in doing the cybersecurity?
Yeah.
I went to Robert Half Recruiter. They told me I had all the education in the world, but no job experience for an entry-level system administrator job.
Wow.
And so I went to a college. I'll leave the college name out.
Okay.
A complete waste of time.
Right.
I learned more at a VOTEC than I did at a college.
Now, you are speaking my language right there. I love the VOTEC concept.
Yep. With the VOTEC, I was the first high schooler that actually completed the Cisco program in a year.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was my senior year. I spent a year at another VOTEC close to here.
Right.
But when I went to the other VOTEC that was, 10 minutes away from my school, I was able to stay like the whole day because I was essentially done with the high school.
Right.
When you teach yourself geometry in 11th grade by yourself because you still need it because apparently when you move from the city to a small little town, right off I-40, it is what it is. But, essentially completed that year for the Cisco, so
Right.
the CCNA. And, trying to get a job, just like a basic entry-level job, they said, you don't have enough job experience.
Well, how do you get job experience?
Right. It's an entry-level system administrator job. I'm like,
Right.
what? I don't understand what's going on here. So,
So that, well, I mean, it's a whole great topic, and we might be going down a rabbit hole. But is it that way still for people? If you don't have, I mean, you go get the education, you do the Cisco training,
right.
but you can't get a job because you don't have. I mean,
No.
how does one get job experience when
By volunteering, honestly,
really?
or, starting your own company. 'Cause
Right.
here I am 22 years later. If I
Yeah.
could go back and tell that Robert Half recruiter, hey, here I am 22 years later. I don't need your entry level stuff. Here's my resume.
Right.
Oh, you're overqualified now. I'm like, oh,
Now you're
thanks.
overqualified, right? Yeah. You don't want to be, too far left or right. You just want to be right in the middle.
You've
yes,
learned too
so-
much.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that's just frustrating to me. And I love the VOTEC concept. I think that's coming back.
Right.
We live in this world where, jobs have changed, but we're always going to need people to work on computers and that are like what you're doing, cybersecurity.
Right.
And we're, I don't know. My youngest is 15 and I don't know what I'm going to tell her. Maybe learn how to weld.
Right. Oh, no, you can still do that. I mean, there's trades still here every single day. You got
Yeah.
plumbers, you got HVAC guys, you got, at that point in time, you can tell her to do whatever you want in the trade because, the trades are never going to go away.
They're never going to go away. Yeah, that is And I've looked at how the world has changed, and I love that concept of, to me, that's the best kind of job security, is to know a trade that's never going away.
Right.
So did you do anything? So this all started before you were in the military, that you began doing cybersecurity?
Right. Yep. Did it back in 2002 when I first started out.
And then how long were you in the military?
So I was in the military for 8 years, 05 to 13.
Got it. Yeah, that had to be 05. Yeah, that had to be an interesting time.
Yeah, it was all overseas. Majority of it was.
Right. So you've been to some wonderful vacation spots with an all-inclusive meal plan.
I don't know if Germany was an all-inclusive meal spot. I was actually in the kitchen that entire time.
Okay. Well, so you have this wealth of experience, but you created it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that story. I mean, that's the true essence of entrepreneurship.
Right.
All right, we're going to take a quick studio break. Mr. Kenneth, who is our advertiser today?
Well, today we're going to talk about all of our sponsors. Before we dive back into today's episode, we're going to shout out our amazing sponsors. This podcast is coming to you from the studio at Elevate Coworking. Our signage is provided by CM Customs, and the show features amazing entrepreneurs from the Tulsa Business Owners Networking Group. We're sponsored by MFP, My Financial Plan, on the web at joinmfp.com. And this show's produced by the audio-video experts at Kenneth Bauckham Photography. With these sponsors at top of mind, let's return to Cashflows, already in progress.
All right. Thank you, Kenneth. We're here with Chris Wilson today. He's with 1080titan.com, 1080 Titan Technologies, and they are in the cybersecurity world. And if you haven't addressed this, it's time to address this. You know, I worry, Kenneth, that there are, we just don't know who's looking at our stuff.
Well, yeah, you gotta know what's going on with your data, your network, your computer. It's all very important.
Yeah, I'm about to the point where I'm just ready to delegate all of that.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Do you know a guy?
We might have a guy.
We might have a guy.
We might have a guy. Well, very cool. Well, Chris Wilson, thank you again for being here and talking to us about cybersecurity. You started in this industry a long time ago. You self-educated yourself. You built a business over the last 22 years. So but in that time, you were in the military as well. How did you balance being in the military, being married, running a business? Like that sounds like a lot of chaos.
Oh, it can be.
Yeah.
So that time frame was really interesting because I was actually in Florida at that time.
Okay.
So with me being Red Horse, could deploy out any time. So a lot of my stuff was just focusing on government bids from the state and local area.
Okay.
Contracts over the United States. And so with that, I also ran an e-commerce store. And so with that, with me deployed over in, Qatar, Iraq, Afghanistan, wherever else you want to be deployed at. And so, essentially it just made it easier to do the other part of the business that I have.
Right.
And so, coming home and essentially Skyping, because my wife was over in Germany. She was Army. She was actually half Italian. And so going over to Italy, and I learned the whole Italian language. And then she got it for free in her dorm in Kuwait. And so, essentially she never took the time to learn it. So what was happening when she finally made it back to Germany is I would Skype with her till about 7, 8 o'clock at night.
Okay.
And then from like 7 to like 11, I would just do the bids for the North Carolina, Oklahoma, New York, you name the state, I was probably bidding for it. Ohio.
So did you ever get a big government contract of any sort? What
I did.
Yeah, what was that like?
FEMA. I've
heard of them.
That was actually a whole production of like their green screen and the lights and everything you imagine for making a production.
My goodness. So you landed the gig to help FEMA create, well,
yeah.
I'm guessing, Kenneth, that's a pretty big gig, right?
It
sounds pretty good.
It was not fun either.
So how long is the process of something like that? I mean, that sounds like it takes a long time.
So with everything they ordered, like the whole production set was like Region X. So is where I sent it to Washington State.
Okay.
And so essentially having to do all the finding of the products because it wasn't a small order at all.
Right.
And so essentially it was finding all the products, sending it, and then invoicing it, and then getting paid.
Okay.
And usually they would wait 30 days to pay me.
Right. So you're out for the money on the front end.
Yeah.
So
essentially.
these government contract ideas are maybe not all they're cut up to be because you got to, you're out on the front.
Right. So here's the thing about that. With me, I only do a 1% markup. That's to cover, the cost of receiving the check and my time for it.
Right.
Essentially 1% isn't a lot to some people, but you're also taking care of taxpayers' money too. I'm not
Right.
because I could overcharge all the day long if I wanted to.
Right.
On some of that stuff. I'm not charging $3,000 for a hammer. I didn't do that.
Right.
And so essentially it was me just marking up 1%.
Got it. So you'd find a vendor for whatever product,
Right.
mark it up to them. Okay.
Right.
So like how long does it take to get a bid like that done? Because I've heard of people doing that. It just sounds daunting to me. How long did it take you to win the FEMA bid?
So it only took me probably about 6 hours to do the bid.
Oh, to put the bid together.
Yeah, because I already had the vendors already in play for what they were
Right.
asking for. So the audio video stuff, I've had that for years.
Right.
And I had the vendor already picked out, and I sent the vendor the list. Hey, what's the best price on this part of it? And then I would mark it up after I would get it, 1%. So, a $2 clip, it was only $3 at the end of the day.
I got it. But you're doing something big enough volume. It's still a
Right.
good deal for.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
Good
it
deal
absolutely
for,
was.
Good deal for you as well. Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. So let's talk about. You've had to learn a lot
Mhm.
in this period.
Right.
Much of it self-taught.
Yeah, you can say that.
Is there one of those lessons that was the hardest lesson you ever had to learn?
Yeah, don't become somebody's bank.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. I had a order, I won't say the actual amount, but it's a good size amount.
Right.
And they set on sending me the check for about 60 days.
Oh,
And
so you were funding them essentially for 60 days.
Essentially funding somebody for 60 days.
You became the bank.
I became the bank.
Wow.
And so, anything that's product related, you want to charge up front.
Yeah.
Anything service related, it's a 50-50 draw.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Don't be the bank.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's we're not in this to. You're doing this to make a profit, and it's hard especially when they're sitting on the money.
Right.
Got it. So, you made yourself educated. You went to tech school, but you also read.
Mm-hmm.
You're a reader. What's the best book you've ever read, or what? Let's name a book that's had a big impact on you.
So there's tons of books that are out there that are good. But, when you deal with some of the stuff that I deal with, Profits First by Mike McAllowitz. I don't get nothing for this, but in that book, I got glued to that in a day and a half, and I read it in a day and a half. And I ended it within a week or less than that because I just had to make sure that everything was coming through.
Right.
And then moved it to, what the book kind of said to do.
And the book name again is Profits First.
Profits First
And can you say the author?
by Mike McAllowitz.
Mike McAllowitz. Okay. Kenneth, we probably ought to look that one up. Profits
Sure.
First.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's another one too with Pumpkin Plan. All his books in his series are good.
Yeah.
The Total Paper Entrepreneur, the Pumpkin Plan, Profits First, Fix This Next, The Clockwork. That Clockwork.
All
was
the
good
same
too.
author.
All the same author.
Right. Have you had a chance to meet him?
I actually have.
Yeah. What was that like?
It was good.
Yeah.
It was short lived because there was 60 other people that went.
Oh
to it, too.
yeah, yeah.
It's at one of those conferences I'm gonna meet him. No, you're not. It's just gonna be 2 seconds, shake his hand, and be done.
But it's still worth it.
Yeah.
Get the photograph and
Right.
be able to say, hey,
But
thanks, this works.
Actually, I never got the photograph.
So close.
We got to work on that.
I know, right?
So your business is going well.
Mhm.
Right now, who is an ideal client for you?
So, honestly, it's 5 and above. But I will tell you, I will work with the 1s and 2s
Right.
because of the fact that, not many of our industry wants to work with the 1s and 2s.
Right.
I actually had somebody down in Florida that came in to the chamber and said that she quit her day job and actually wanted to start her own business.
Right.
So essentially from 1 person to 36 within, 6 months.
Wow.
They actually got a contract with a school district. Florida does their school districts
Right.
by county.
Right.
And so essentially, since I was there at the beginning, I was there at the end because, as soon as they hit 15, 10, 5, 25, whatever.
Those are numbers of employees, or is that revenue?
Users.
Users. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So when they hit that time, it was usually when they would start coming in. But since I was there at the beginning and, I worked with them, that worked out for me in the end.
So I work in the financial industry, and we're contemplating adding some employees. Are you able to work with employees to teach them what to do, what not to do?
Yeah, it's the cybersecurity training I actually give for free.
Really? Okay.
Yep.
Because you said, and we won't say the name that was on the coffee cup, but don't click on stuff.
Right.
We can shorten it to that.
Right.
Do you find that it's people just clicking on obscure things? I don't go to that many websites. I've got some basic things that I do.
Right. There's a SLAM method that I can actually go over with a person.
Say it again, the SLAM method?
Mm-hmm.
And that tells us what to avoid?
Essentially, yeah. You look at the subject line and, see that subject line, if it's written wrong. The message, if there's misspelled words, that should not be misspelled.
Right.
AI is getting better at the end of the day, but it's still missing stuff.
Right.
Just the other day, I did something in one of my apps that I use for AI, and I'm like seeing a word come over wrong. I'm like, are you serious? That word is wrong. You got to check your stuff.
Right.
Because if you don't check your stuff, essentially you're not going to be looked at as, being like correct on your stuff. Yeah, you can misspell words. I mean, people do it all the time just to get attention for their stuff.
Right.
But, how much attention you want for a misspelled word that should be, spelled right?
Right. So I heard Elon Musk discuss his thoughts on AI,
Mm-hmm.
and my recollection of his conversation was that he felt like it was a big danger. What are your thoughts on it?
It is. And I tell you, AI, if not used correctly, is going to be detrimental, because if you put in people's names into AI and have them sort or, something of that nature, it's going to be going into some database.
Right.
I think it was ChatGPT has already been hacked. That was hacked over a year ago.
Really?
Yeah. You can probably search for it and find it. Essentially, if you're putting in email addresses and people's names into that, you shouldn't be doing that.
Really?
Text file or something of that nature, those need to be into a secure spot. Having them sit on your desk atop and or your desk in general, and somebody walks in and wants to be malicious, especially if you don't use a business email address.
Right.
Sales in the company name at, Gmail. I put sales1 in the company name at Gmail. They ain't gonna know the difference.
Right.
They just know that, hey, you need to send me $3,000. Essentially that might have been what the cost was. If you see a random number pointed out with the person's name.
Interesting.
So it can get interesting.
So I've been a little worried about the AI stuff. Kenneth, what's your slant been on it? Have you been paying attention?
Yeah, I've been paying attention, and that's actually an excellent point about not putting the sensitive data into things like ChatGPT. For me, AI has some other uses and meanings as well, like in the photo editing world, right?
Right.
I'm not saying that it's not a security risk, but it's a different kind of process mentally for how you would deal with things. But yeah, definitely. There's a lot of people that are trying to make their work easier, and instead of learning how to use Excel properly on their own computer, they're like copying and pasting stuff to the internet, and it's on the internet.
Right.
AI, what's the part that people miss about things like ChatGPT is everything you type in is not only a question to the computer, but you're training the computer how to work. And so that's what Chris is saying, is that now it just knows this extra information that is probably none of its business to know.
Right. Okay. So I've heard people say that when you use something like the ChatGPT thing, that the stuff that they give you back, I don't think they test it for copyright, perhaps.
Right. It may or may not be false. It may be false information, or it may be copyrighted. It may be borrowed from somewhere, because again, it has learned, it has trained, its makers have trained it on content from the internet. So like you can ask it questions about William Shakespeare and it should give you a reasonable answer. But the more detailed you get, and depending on how many people are misleading it, well, now it might start to provide false information. And there's actually articles out there that are super fun to read about how it has manufactured not only facts, but manufactured the article that supports those facts.
Wow. Okay.
Just made it up.
what I think there are obviously some inherent dangers of AI. But there's some positives too. I mean,
absolutely.
Do you think they balance out?
Oh, absolutely. I think they balance out. You can put in, write me a letter, and that doesn't sound so salesy at that point in time.
Right.
I've seen some good stuff being out of it, but there's also the fact that, you can change a couple words, and there's like cheat sheets for ChatGPT to actually get the results you want to have.
Really? So people are using it to write like you said, sales letters or
Sales,
marketing pieces.
marketing pieces, you know, anything that can help your business grow. I mean, why not use it? You just got to be with anything. You just got to be careful. It's like moderation at that point in time.
Yeah.
You don't want to always go to AI. Then you lose the ability to think for yourself.
Right.
If you don't think for yourself, then, you know, going into Facebook asking a question, you know, essentially, you know, it is what it is. People don't want to research anything. I mean, the internet's full of stuff. It's not 1995 anymore.
Right. And that is an interesting topic.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stand on my side of the line on that for now until I know better. Because I mean, I'm a computer. I'm not a nerd in the good way.
Right.
I just don't know that much about it. And you know, I know how to turn on the computer that we do have and do my one or two little pieces of work, and that's it. Then I get off. So here's a good one. If you could go back 22 years, and tell yourself something like, "Hey, watch out." And I know, but what kind of advice? We talked a little bit about this about don't be the bank, and
right.
that's good advice. But what about actually developing business? Is there something that you learned along the way that you wish you had known at 20 or 22 years? 22 years ago?
So if I would have told my 20-year-old self back then, you know, essentially I would have said, don't be the bank, create your processes. Because if you don't create your processes now, when you're 20 years and you're trying to implement them and you have clients for over 15 years,
Right.
and they start questioning why you don't do this now, you've never done this. You know, essentially it's creating those processes and sticking to them.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, if you don't have the processes in place already and you've done it from day one,
Right.
15 years when you had that client, and they're like, why are you now making me pay up front for, you know, the hardware that you know I'm already going to pay you because I've been with you for 15 years. It's a process we ever had. I was hungry. And so when you were hungry for business, you kind of let some processes go away. But if you
Right.
stick to a process, it creates a culture.
Right.
And when you create that culture, you have the ability to grow and keep stuff in place. So why is Johnny getting picked on when, you know, Peter isn't?
Right.
And so, you know, Peter does stuff and Johnny is not happy about it, but, you know, it is what it is. I would say processes.
Okay. I think that's, in my business, that was correct. I wish I'd learned some quicker. We are here today with Chris Wilson, 1080titan.com, 1080 Titan Technologies, and we're talking about cybersecurity. We had a great interview today, and I'm just going to say that, you know, I'm a little bit on edge. I think these are things that we all, and you know, and my wife doesn't pay much attention, and I have a 15-year-old daughter that clicks on everything. I should probably be aware of that. So we're going to wrap up with and we call this our you know, little wisdom for entrepreneurs, our daily gold nugget. But I want to ask you the three things that you would tell a new business owner as we wrap up your show today. And what would you tell to a new business owner today in this time and place?
So the overall headline of that one is brand consistency.
Okay.
People tell me that, you know, they want to have brand consistency, they just don't know how to do it.
Right.
Well, if you have a domain, that's great. That's a start.
Right.
Because, you know, people go online and look for stuff. You know, they look at Better Business Bureau. They look at a chamber. They look at all these places for your stuff, your views on Google. And having that brand consistency is a big thing that, you know, that's coming from a professional looking email, you know,
Right.
your name at your domain,
Right.
not an at Gmail. The other part of that is to, you know, do canned responses. And the reason I say canned responses is because some of the questions are always going to be the same. It's going to be like an FAQ. You don't need to put an FAQ on your website. Just have those canned responses to
Right.
where this is why we do the things we do, that we don't have to rewrite it every single time.
Okay.
And put that on like a OneNote or a notepad or whatever.
Right.
But when you add those three together and you have that brand consistency, you know, things flow a lot easier. People will say, well, aren't you a corporate? I'm like, you're here to make money, aren't you? Yes.
Yeah.
And so essentially when you do brand consistency and you're consistent about how you write stuff
Right.
and your processes are already in play, I mean, why not do that from the very beginning?
That's a good one.
You like that?
I like it.
All right. Well, you about ready to wrap this show up?
Sure, let's do it.
I think we're right on the number. And our guest today is Chris Wilson. You can find Chris at 1080titan.com. His company is 1080 Titan Technologies. And we talked today about cybersecurity. And if you're not a little worried then you misunderstood, because there's a lot going on out there. And I think the time and place, you kind of have to make a stand on some of those things. You've worked far too hard to have some jackweed hacker mess with all your stuff. So, Chris, thank you so much for being here today on Cashflows. Kenneth, I think that's going to be a wrap, buddy.
All right.
I'm with another good show. This one's a little more worrisome because the need is so vast. So anyway, well, I want to say thanks to Chris for coming in today. I want to thank our sponsors for continuing to keep us on the air. And, it can be a crazy world out there, especially, when people are attacking you online. And most of us are online so often that it just makes sense to take some of that action. But we're just trying to figure it out, build the dream one day at a time, building towards something that's valuable. And we really hope that people like Chris can help you out as you begin your climb or continue your climb as you ascend to whatever your beautiful goal is. And for today, let's be nice to each other. It's just that simple, Kenneth. Let's just go out and be nice to one another. Let's make good choices for ourselves and for our business. And more importantly, just today, let's go forgive somebody who absolutely doesn't deserve it. Forgiveness is not about the other person. Forgiveness is about you and cutting those ties that bind you down and maybe are holding you back just a little bit. So we're all forgiven. Wouldn't it be great to forgive others? And to our friends out there that continue to like our Facebook page, to our sponsorship with the Commodore 64 Computer Company, and to all of our friends out there, we want to say thank you for being here today. And a reminder, this show, it's about you, and we're glad that you're here. Thanks for being part of Cashflows.
That's our show for today. Stay tuned for another riveting edition of Cashflows.